forward.
So thank you all very much for coming down here. We do have a quorum of voters so that we can proceed. Just on a, before we begin, two events happened that are very nice. One yesterday, I spent a few minutes with Kim and Colette. We ran into one another at Planet Fitness, and he looks tremendous. The executive director stress has sort of dissipated. He appears healthy. He says he's still coping with significant medical issues, but he's doing really fine in terms of adjusting, because it's only been since December that he stopped working. And I told him, as an experienced retiree, it takes you about a year before you begin to get your feet underneath you after you stop working, especially he did it for 30 years. So he passes along his regards to everybody. He misses the people, which is a normal thing, you know, that whenever you leave a job like that, it's never the tasks, it's the people. And he looks back favorably. And the second news was that in the election last evening, Jane Cormier, who was a freshman representative that put in a totally unnecessary bill to eliminate the planning commissions, she was defeated in her quest for a Senate seat down in Hooksett. She had just moved down to Hooksett and took on an incumbent senator down there, David Booton, and he easily beat her. So she's no longer in an official position with the state government. Why don't we begin the agenda then? Consideration of the minutes of July 9th. Are there any, why don't we have a motion to approve and then we can discuss. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Is there a discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The next is the draft treasurer's report for August. Jeff, would you like to make any comments?
Sure. There's not a whole lot to report. It's the beginning of the year where our income is we're exceeding expenses by quite a bit, which is normal this time of year because we have the dues. We start out with the dues amount, which puts us ahead of the game in terms of income over expense. There's not a whole lot more going on there. We've definitely been moving forward with you know, changing the copier and the phone system and things like that. So that's why some of these office improvement expenses and hardware are showing up. But I don't think there's anything else all that interesting besides that.
No surprises, positive or negative?
Not so far.
Oh, outstanding. Very good. Is there a motion to accept the draft treasurer's report subject to audit for August?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Is there a discussion? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
You said the treasurer's report, right? In the minutes should say that.
Did I?
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you said.
I could have.
No, I could have.
Okay.
That's what that is.
The next item is consideration of the FY16 municipal appropriations. These are the dues shared by the municipality. With the big blue column. Yeah. Jeff, do you want to make any comments?
Sure. So, you know, this is for next year, but we've already gotten a few requests from municipalities that are doing their budgeting that need these numbers. So I think we need to get a recommendation today and bring it to the commission meeting on the 29th, and then we can send out letters to the communities. Basically what I've done here is just add that inflation factor from the Department of Labor website, the U.S. Consumer Price Index for May 2014, consistent with how it's been done in the past. And so it's a slight 2.1% increase in dues across the board, and those are the numbers.
This is the same formula that we have used for many years municipalities understand it. And the dues income is significant to us because of the need for matching. So many grants from the different sources, private sources, state and federal, require a match, a percent match, and that's what the dues income provides. The other thing that it provides is the stability for the organization, because so many of the grants are very specific as to what they can be used for, and indirect labor charged against them. And so,
And any local technical assistance, anytime a town asks for assistance from us and there's no contract, this is what we rely on. And then for some of our regional programs, which we don't have funding for, we use this fund.
so is there any, could I have a motion to approve the municipal appropriations for FY16?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a comment,
Yes.
since this gets distributed in various forms, it might be worth having another note that defines how the formula for the distribution, the average of the population and the assessed values, so as newcomers probably don't even know what the derivation of the distribution is. It might be good just to put a note on there.
That's very wise, you're true.
Yeah.
Because in municipalities, the select boards change so
Yeah.
often
Yeah,
that it would help them to know that it isn't just plucked out of the thin
yeah,
air.
just a one sentence thing.
With that adjustment, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Good wise counsel, Mr. Snelling. The auditor's contractor approval. This is a engagement letter that had normally not come before us, have been on the agenda, and it's a result of us last year, prior to entering into the search for a new executive director, of putting on record that the auditor, our current auditor, reports to the executive council, this council, and so that there would not be a change without our agreement. It was carefully worded so that the new executive director could come to us and say that he was recommending to us a change in the auditor, and then we would participate in that decision and make the final selection. But this was to ensure that this group had absolute authority over the audit firm that is engaged. And so what Jeff talked with me, and I asked him to sign the letter because it's completely in agreement with our policy that this auditor is going to be our auditor, and they required a letter of engagement, and so it was signed. And Jeff's just being super respectful of the board's desires. Would you like to say anything else about that?
Just that it's $2,500 fee is a quite reasonable fee for an audit, and he also said that, I don't know how likely this is, that there might even be a reduction in that because it did go very smoothly this year. And he's a pleasure to work with. He's a smart, sharp guy.
He'll be coming in a little bit later today with the actual audit report to review with us as he normally does. So just to, as a confirmation of our process and Jeff signing of this thing, I would like to ask for a vote of agreement to this action that has been taken.
So
I'll make him, go ahead.
Oh, you go.
You're older.
No,
Whoa! It's coming at you from all over now.
At two, Barbara?
Motion made by Barbara, seconded by Bob. Any discussion?
I'm not seconding.
Yes, Mr. Cotton.
He must be a smart guy because he's provided himself enough loopholes. So they can make almost any
Oh,
mistake
sure.
they want and not be blamed for it. Really amazing.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
I read a statistic lately on that, no, you know, just not to give us any, I think it was a fuzzy feeling that only about 3% of fraud is found with an audit. So it's, you know,
Yeah.
it shouldn't, we still have to keep on top of
That's
this.
That's right.
Okay, with those comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. I would just like to ask the will of the board here, that this seems to be a routine document, and our passing of the resolution in our bylaws that if the auditor is to be changed, it comes before us, but to continue with the current auditor, I would just like the opinion of the board. Can Jeff just do this next year and not have to bring it before the board, or would you like this brought before this board?
I don't think we need it brought before us.
Not if it's the same audit.
If it's the
No,
same.
the same audit.
I don't see it.
Okay, good. And next year, just sign it on, right? Unless you want to make a change in the auditor, in which case you come before the board with that.
Yeah.
Okay. And you want to go on to the draft of the annual report?
Sure.
That's this one that was sent out ahead of time?
Yeah, so, scrambling a little bit to put this together, we didn't, we just got the fax copy of the auditor's letter yesterday, so we weren't able to cut and paste it in here, so that's why that page is blank, but you're about to receive that page when Herb gets here. And besides that, I don't think there's anything too awfully, I used the format, I kind of copied the format of previous annual reports, updated, plugged in the updates. I made color, I made it so we could see the lakes a little bit better on the map on the back. I figured a regional map, you ought to be able to see the lakes in it. Sorry, Wayne?
Jeff, one question. On the revenue side, the monies you take in for household hazardous waste from the communities, where does it go?
It's a good question. I would say local contracts.
Local contracts?
Yeah, which helps to boost that number
So it's
up.
not in the memberships?
No, the membership is just the dues.
Purely membership.
I had one comment on the FY14 expenditure figure. Color between contracted services and labor. If you
Yeah.
can't distinguish them, so
That's
I would
tough to
maybe
see.
move that contracted services on the other side of the red on the household hazardous waste or something, so you can distinguish between the, or change the color to something else, but you have two blues right next to each other and you can't separate them.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and that damn thing, the graph down below is the graph that's been used in previous years. It's right on the verge of you not being able to read the numbers, I think. I
Right.
think we sort of, we wanted to squeeze it in there. Are all of these graphs helpful? Equally helpful?
And we had quite a discussion a
Oh,
couple
you
times
have?
on this, yeah. And the consensus was that the graphs are easier for people to grasp. And also the revenues by program, it took them from the total level and put them down so that people could see easily that, like, regional services are so important in transportation.
Yeah, and this really answers the question of where the money goes for the different programs. You can see where the membership appropriation goes in that graph.
Yeah. Now, after this is approved by the commission and you reproduce this, is this a printed piece or is this will it look like this or will it be a lot sharper?
I wasn't planning on having it professionally printed, but we could consider that. We're actually, we doubled the number of color copies we could get with a new copier, but we're at our limit right now, so it might make sense to have this done outside. It was gonna cost over $100 for each one of these, to have these printed.
Each one?
Each one. So we just did that internally.
Wow, no wonder they went over.
I mean, it's 700 plus pages, there's a lot of color.
Oh, yeah.
It was, but, you
My
know.
comment just was on the sharpness of this, because when you read it, yeah, I know I'm getting older every day, but reading it was like trying to.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that it isn't, it's fuzzy enough so that people won't read it. And it would be nice to have it sharp enough so that they could read it, appreciate it, and if any questions came out about it, it wouldn't be a question of my eyesight. You know, what is that number? Is it 4,000 or 40,000?
So just in general, all of the type, really, and the pictures or specific parts of it are fuzzy? I mean, I know the graphs in particular are not the highest quality.
Personally, it was just that graph section that I was having,
Yeah,
that one
that's the
page I
only-
was having trouble with.
Just,
The other ones, all the written, that's very good.
Yeah. I'm trying to squeeze too many graphs into it. Okay, I'll work on that.
No,
I'll
I
figure
think
out
you were
something
right
else.
putting that number of graphs on there. It's just that page, when you get down into the numbers, the reproduction technique makes it fuzzy.
Yeah. Yeah, and we already worked on this graph. I already said, you know, it's improved over where it was, but it's still not, it still could be improved.
So I have no idea how to do it.
I have a comment on the other graph, the lake revenue and consumer price index.
Yeah.
The black line that shows the total revenue index for CPI starts out in the middle of the 2004, and it doesn't agree with the total revenues for that year. And I think the reason is that line started way back in year aught. As I recall, originally it started way back in the, I don't know, 70s, 1970s or something. So it showed that over a long period of time, our revenues have far exceeded just the increase due to the cost of doing business. Look at the red line that happens to agree with the membership appropriations for 2004. So if we're going to, I could be wrong on this, but I think that's why the total revenue line is so much less than the year-to-year revenues. That if we're going to continue to advance this graph 1 year at a time and show 10 years of history, then perhaps CPI at the first year ought to be the same as the revenue for that, and just show it from that point on. You understand what I'm?
I was following you up until that last thing that you said.
Yeah, so for example, on this graph, perhaps the beginning of the black line should be at 500,000, not at 300,000.
Oh, I
The
see what
reader
you're
doesn't
saying.
know
Right.
what the starting point of that line was, and I think it starts way back, and that's why it's low, because our revenues have over the years, has far exceeded the cost of doing business. But we don't want to have a graph that goes back to 1970 either.
Could a note be put in there to do that, Bob?
But you could put,
Yeah, that's a good.
yeah,
Simple
total
note,
revenue
yeah.
index to CPI. I don't know how you want to word it, but, you know, referenced to 1980,
yeah, initial year,
not
1980
reference to
something.
1980 costs or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, I think it's
So
better than
It
trying to.
explains why it's so much lower than the actual costs we're showing.
One of the things I can remember the discussion, the objective of this chart is to show our communities that the local appropriations have been pretty consistent and low compared to the total revenues that we've been able to source. And to show the value proposition in what the dues and participation does. Because all those blue lines, total revenues, are all related to total grants and programs and things that we've been able to not only source, but actually perform the service for.
Maybe it's not even worth showing you the CPI reference on it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what it says is that, you know, even with inflation, you know, our total revenues have grown.
Right, and
Versus, you know,
and the membership appropriations have actually,
Evident from somebody who begins looking at that figure and saying they're just spending too much, they've just grown too much.
well, and I think maybe that's what the black line is showing. Indexed to CPI, it's not, our total revenue, when you consider inflation, has been pretty steady and has been on upward increase a little bit, but it hasn't, it's not as steep as those blue lines say.
The reason both the revenues and the expenses have grown is that the commission has performed more services, more contracts, more studies, more planning documents for all different levels of customer.
I understand that. I was just bringing up the aspect from a
No, I think as always, I think you're very wise.
ultra-conservative standpoint.
What generally happens is that when the appropriations go out, the new budget committee members and the new selectmen call Jeff and say, get up here, are we getting our value for our money? And Jeff goes and meets with them and is able to explain how this political subdivision of the state is really a pay-as-you-go kind of thing, that if we don't provide the services, we don't get the revenue, and then it's shrunk. It is not a self-perpetuating machine here. Any other comments about the annual report? I just a general comment, I was going through it, and I think the writing and the way you present things, Jeff, is outstanding.
Well, thank you
I
very
really, the comments that you make in your message hit things like, we're trying to promote a balance between individual opportunities and community interests. It talks about economic opportunity and environmental quality. It really, this one section here really is the meat and potatoes of what it is we do, and you explained it very, very well.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to add to that. I would have to agree with you. I thought this would be actually very useful to give to my budget committee, because I know the question is gonna come up, what does Lrpc do for us?
Sure.
Even though they've been told over and over, it is helpful for them to have, you know, a reminder of what it is they're getting when they agree to that contribution amount. And this is, I think, a great way to explain what it is we get out of Lakes Region Planning Commission, why the commission exists.
And also, to that point, as soon as the quote elections are over here, and we do have new state senators and new state representatives, I think for their education, so that they can understand what it is we do and help them get up to speed, that we should target a mailing of this to them, and try to do, I don't know if it's in what kind of a format, but as we saw last time, freshman legislators go off on tangents and they don't spend the time to understand what's taking place and why before they start putting in bills. And so it would be very good, and I think in coming on, so one lesson we have learned is that we need to teach more. And this is a very useful tool, so that after the elections, I'd recommend that this will go out to the current legislators, but that the new ones get this.
Will do.
So then I would like to ask a motion, given all these comments and suggestions, is there a motion to approve the annual report?
So moved.
Seconded. Good.
Can
Okay.
I ask a question?
Yes.
Did we decide whether he's printing or whether you're printing?
What I'd really like to try to do is see if I can get the quality up in-house. If we can't get the quality up in-house, then I guess we gotta send it out. It's, which we can do.
Yeah.
Maybe you could send one page out if you have to, and not send the others. I
That's
don't-
possible, man. Yeah, take a look at it and see what we can, because it really is just that one, the graphs that are concerning.
You just can't read the numbers
I
well.
mean, I could almost add an extra page, you can only add 4 pages, that's the problem, but, all right, we'll take a look at that, and it seems like we could do it in-house, but if not, we'll do it out.
Is it
outside.
cost effective because of the ink prices and all that? Have you thought of that?
Well, you know, it was cost effective for us to do this.
I'm sure.
And when I look at the budget, you know, doing that outside services, I mean, we're paying for the photocopy, we're paying for Marie's time, and we're paying for other things already, it's in the
Exactly.
budget versus, you know, if I do that outside, it's not necessarily in the budget.
Right.
So I would have paid, like, over $2,000, or we would have paid over $2,000 to have, you know, these done, and I just didn't think that was a good use, but.
Does your machine fold those for you? Or do you have to fold those? No,
They don't, no, it doesn't
in the
fold,
report.
doesn't fold.
Well, let's leave that problem with him. He knows our objective here, and.
And the other question too, I'm assuming that when it's done, not a draft anymore, that will be going to selectmen and planning boards of all the towns?
Yeah, I think this will go to our whole 900 stakeholder list, which includes, you know, those are the core of it.
Thank you.
But it includes a lot of other partners too.
It's good for them to see that in their hand, and it's gorgeous.
Thank you, yeah, I don't get credit for the design of it, I sort of went on the back of what had been done before, but thank you.
I particularly like, and I know you follow the thing, where it talks about what happened, and then talks about what we're going to do. And I like that, rather than just being a document that talks about last year and pats itself on the back.
That is an innovation of this, and that I had to think about too, because it does, you know, usually you talk about what's, you know, just what's, what you've, you know, what has happened over the last year, but this looks ahead.
But it's establishing by category here, objectives that we're going to be focused on. And it's an opportunity of bringing back an educational tool of helping people understand what next year is planned to be like. No, I like that a lot. Given all those comments, call the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It has been approved, and now the next step will be to, at the commission meeting, and you'll
Yes.
send this out before the commission meeting to the commissioners?
Yeah, it'll be with the commission packet that is set to go out.
Outstanding. The audit report, he hasn't knocked at the door yet. Then,
9:30, it's exactly 9:30 now.
what a tight ship you're in. This
It
is
is
not
nice,
involved,
nice
there you
work,
go, Paul.
Chairman.
Yeah, something. But I particularly like everybody participating in the discussion like this and so forth. This isn't just a.
You tell us all.
Yeah, because who the devil, isn't that?
Yeah. As if we listen.
Why don't we move into the subcommittee reports here, and then when he does come, we can interrupt and accommodate his schedule, okay? The transportation TAC, there is a meeting this afternoon of the TAC, and it will be right here from 2 to 4, and it's going to be working on the new transportation alternative programs. A lot of the former specialized categories like safe routes to school and things like that have been now lumped into a transportation alternatives program. And so Mike Izard is the principal planner reporting to Jeff, who's specializing in transportation, as you all know. And the TAC is made up of a majority of the DPW directors in all of our towns and cities. and Steve's on there too. How'd you ever get on there?
I drive a sitting lawnmower.
Oh, yeah. So that's gonna be happening this afternoon. Do you have anything else you'd like to say about that, John?
Well, we just had our midterm, we have a 2-year contract with DOT, and we're 1 year through it. We just had our meeting as of July, and we had a good discussion with them about this commission really wanting to focus on that nexus, that connection between water quality and transportation, and talking with their the federal person from Federal Highways as well as DOT about that. And they actually were pretty supportive of that idea. There's basically 6 goals of the MAP 21 legislation, including safety and mobility and things like that, but environmental quality is one of those factors. And so we are justified under the federal law to steer our program to think particularly about water quality in this region. And I think the more I think about it's stormwater runoff and a lot of other things, but it's kind of exciting to think about that can be more of a specialty for this organization, and we can help lead the way a little bit on that in the state. And so I'm really interested in pursuing that, and when we do, we're going to be working on our scope of work for the next 2-year cycle in the next few months, and by December timeframe we'll have something framed out for the next DOT cycle, and we do want to think about this idea of maybe do some GIS analysis and some other things around. Hi, Herb.
Come on in.
Get you a chair.
How are you? Are you still here?
We just have one subject, Herb, to conclude, and
So that's something that we're interested in working on. We're interested in discussing more with the TAC. We're interested in commissioners and executive board giving that some thought. So I was talking about maybe initially doing some GIS analysis to look at where roads are in proximity to water bodies, it might be next to water bodies, and start quantifying some of that around the region. And I think that's going to help us in addressing some of the stormwater issues that are of concern already and are going to become of more concern as those regulations are set to tighten up in the future.
I know from the City of Laconia perspective, the planning board, we spend a very large amount of our time on stormwater management and how it affects lake quality, especially on Paugus Bay, the Weirs Boulevard, the developments that are taking place landslide side of Paugus, and how they affect the runoff into the lake. So I applaud this direction. Any other questions concerning the TAC? Oh, there is one point. A couple of years ago, while being vice chairman, Dick Waite, who had been the executive committee representative on the TAC, due to declining health, he gave up that responsibility, and I assumed it. And I would like to open that up. If any member of the executive committee would like to be that representative to the TAC. I'm not trying to get rid of it, but I don't think that having the chairman be the representative is particularly respectful of the executive committee. If anyone would like to be that representative, you can talk to me and we'll just do it. But it is a good group. You find out a lot of what's going on in the state. Thank you. Why don't we suspend the reports, we'll get back into them. And sir, ask you to do your presentation. Yes.
Make the usual presentation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, it's good to be here again. I'll make a couple of general comments, some that don't refer really to the commission, but to you guys personally, or if you're in business and so forth. One is that Congress, in its great wisdom, has not passed a law extending many credits that expired last December 31st. So that means your accountant is going to have a terrible time getting tax returns done, like it was like 2 years ago. Every election year, apparently, members of Congress, they don't like to make a stand on anything until after the election. And so, and one of the big ones is for business people, and small or large, it doesn't matter. They have a IRS section 179, which allows you to expense equipment, vehicles and so forth, 100% in the year you buy them. Through 12/31/13, you could buy $500,000 worth of equipment and write it all off in 1 year. Right now, it's only $25,000. That's a huge difference for business. And then their businesses can't do their planning and so forth. So it's things like that that it's going to hold up the forms, because IRS makes up, they're doing their forms in October, November. IRS, if you recall, back in 12, they passed the law that they need to do now to extend these things the last week of December. So IRS and certain forms were not available until late in February, which put all the tax preparers way behind, and loads of people on extension. So that's personal and business.
Does that have any effect on us?
Not on the commission, no. No, if you were paying tax, yes, it would be. Another thing that's down the road, that's, I don't know how to put it here, it affects generally accepted accounting principles. And the world is now becoming global, and so the American Institute of CPAs, and FASB, Federal Accounting Standards Board, are getting together with the people in Europe and Asia around the world to come up with a common set of rules for generally accepted accounting principles. So things are going to change. One of them is going to change that will affect you, but the change is not right away. It was going to be, but they postponed it, they pushed it down the road. I think it's effective for years beginning after January 1 of 2017. So that would be your year 7/1/17 to 18, to June 30, 18. Reporting of contracts in progress. They are going to go on reporting completed contract. So your income statement will only reflect income from contracts completed during that year.
No.
Instead of taking credit for any income or loss, if you have a loss, as you go along, the accounting for it is going to be, well, I'm sure it'll be fine. But the costs you incur on a job, that will be included on your balance sheet as like a prepaid asset. I'm sure they'll have a fancy name for it. Contracts in process expenditures. Then on the other side of it, your billings that you do will be all considered to be deferred income. Then when the job, a particular job is finished, they'll take out of deferred income all the billings and throw them into the income statement and offset it with the expenses. So it's going to make the income statement look a little strange. Internally, you probably will be all right as you go along in your monthly meetings. Well, where do we stand on this contract and that contract? Because you're going to have to keep track of it as you go along anyway, but the reporting is going to be different.
So that will require more of a book bookkeeping focus on our part.
It's gonna be a nightmare for the bookkeeper, yes.
Because
Yeah.
Jeff's in the process of, our current bookkeeper is retiring on Barbara. And he's developing candidates and interviewing candidates for that position. So that's something to keep in mind too.
Yeah.
Barbara has been really a godsend for this place. She got things straightened out. I mean, the audit just is a pure audit. We're not making bookkeeping entries and all that. She's on top of everything. She understands the process and is interested. It's a shame that she can't continue, but she has a problem with her parents, I believe, or her mother.
Mother, I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
So she has done one terrific job, and I'm sure she will train the new person, and hopefully the new person will pick up on where she's at. She's the best we've ever had, really is.
It would be nice that when you do decide and when the change takes place, I'm sure you're gonna have some kind of a gathering or something like that of the staff or something. It'd be awful nice to have a letter from the executive board just thanking her, so. Yeah, thanking Barbara. I'm sure you'll do it as the executive director, but just based on this, Hertz comments and what we've seen here, it would be good to have a letter from us thanking you.
One other accounting change they're going to make too, to come along with the global system is any leased equipment or property, vehicles, copiers, whatever, they will be capitalized. In other words, they'll be shown as an asset as if you owned it, when you don't. It's going to drive certainly accountants like me that have been doing all these years, and but other people too. It's hard to understand that you're picking something up that you own, as if you owned it when you really don't. It won't affect the bottom line because it will be written off over the same period as the lease, but again, so all financial statements wherever prepared in the world supposedly will have the same set of principles. So, okay. That said, page 1 is our independent auditor's report. All the same information is in it as before, it just has a little clarification in it. The highlighted items, the second paragraph, excuse me, management's responsibility for the financial statements. That paragraph reads the same as the paragraph we had a year ago. It's just trying to identify the different parts of this letter, of this report. Then our responsibility, and then the final paragraph is the opinion, which, as in the past, is unqualified. And I think that's it. As I say, the commentary in it is the same, it's just broken up a little differently. Page 2. Statement of financial position. This statement tells you where you stood as of June 30 of, in this case, 2014, at the close of business. Everything here changes, or not everything, but property, equipment, wouldn't, but everything changes the next day. Depends on when people pay you their receivables, or you pay your bills, and that kind of thing. But if you went out of business as of June 30th, 2014, all the assets would be converted into cash. Presumably you'd get at least $7,600 for your property and equipment, maybe more. You pay off all your liabilities, all the current liabilities there, and you would have at that date $435,108 in the bank, which presumably would go back to the participating towns or whatever. But that's how I look at a statement like this. If I went out of business, here's where I stand that day. just a couple of comments on the items. Cash went down 28,000 actually, and these items, the reduction in that is that's all explained on page 4 when we get to it, which is the statement of cash flow, and that shows the different changes that make up that $28,000. One of the largest single items in that reduction was the payoff that you had to make. If you look down to accrued vacation pay, it went from 36,000 down to 13,000. The difference is Kim's accrued vacation pay, and so that explains the biggest part of that reduction in cash. Office equipment, that increased by the purchase of the Rico copier, 9,500. And accrued salaries, the year before payday came right on June 30th, so we had no accrued salaries in 2013. This year we had a whole week. So I commented on the vacation pay. And then you have 2 deferred items, the local community assessments, 121,010. That represents the assessments to the towns for the year ending June 30 of 15. So that's why it's held here as deferred. It's not the next day, July 1, you're in your new year, and theoretically, then you can use that as income. Same thing is true on the deferred grant and HHW income. And I think the HHW, of that 86,771, HHW was 75,000, and that was available to be used in the next month when you had your HHW going on. 10,000 of that 86 is the Pardo, they always pay ahead of time, and contracts, which is $984. Again, the reserve balance, 435,000, that's the reserve as of June 30th, 14. And that decreased from 2013 in the amount of $27,478, which represents your loss for the year, which is shown on page 3. That's the step page. That 27,000 is in the next to the last column on the right-hand side, down near the bottom. You'll see the 415,108 that ties into the general fund balance, and then just above it is the loss of the 27,748, and that's the total column for 2014. This here the resources are shown by source, community assessments, and by the different categories. Again, this is presented in the same way your budget is worked on: regional services, local services, and transportation, and so forth. So I think the state departments like to see that breakdown of where their money is and so forth. And expenses down a little more than halfway down the page, they totaled $745,499. Those are broken down in 2 places, pages 10 and 11, and way in the back, and then on page 8 we have it by the type of expense that will tie into that figure. And again, the fund balance is of 415,108. One thing I didn't comment on, and back on the other page, was your fund balance is really 435, but many years ago, and I think it's in the footnote, it was voted to set aside $20,000 as a reserve fund. There's no separate checking account with 20,000 in it. It's part of the cash that's up above. And let's say that you spent down all that 415,000. You wouldn't be able to go into that 20,000 without a vote of this body. It's not really restricted, it's designated. So if something's designated, you can undesignate it anytime you want to.
Jeff, as we look at in this year, our investment policies and positions and everything, could you just make a note that we revisit that and to straighten that out?
Right.
It does appear that it's a antiquated restriction, and that as we look at everything in total, we could, as the executive board could decide whether we wanted to keep that in there or just eliminate that as an element. Thanks, sir.
Mhm. The details on all of this, page 3 of my project are all in the back on pages 10 and 11. Those when we get to the very end. The next page is page 4. This is the statement of cash flows and explains the difference in cash, the decrease of 28,150. What you start out with is either the gain or the loss. In this case, it's a loss. And you add back the non-cash item depreciation, because this is a cash flow statement. And basically, the figures down below, the differences between those different items in the balance sheet or the financial position. And as you can see down the middle of the page, a decrease in accrued vacation, 23,180. That's a big item. Purchase of equipment was 9504. That's the copier. Then you have things going the other way. Accrued salaries changed. And, those are the major changes. The financial statement, the notes to the financial statements, again required by generally accepted accounting principles, and I'm sure the global people will come up with something new here. I haven't read anything yet, but I'm sure we will. First, note A is your accounting policies. This hasn't changed. This page has not changed at all. Basic accounting policies, that's all. So the reader of the statement can see whether you're cash basis, accrual basis, you know, what kind of business you are, and do you write off doubtful accounts, and how do you handle your property and equipment. The only change in property and equipment would be if a particular project called for you to buy a special kind of equipment, or a vehicle or whatever, and in which case it's written off in that year because it has to be written off against the job. So that's the only exception from that.
I just wanted to point out that we have I think it's a 5-year lease on the copier, and you explained that that's considered, it shows up as our property, but I just wanted the board to know we don't own the copier, we have a 5-year lease on the copier.
Yeah.
Just as a
Okay.
fine point,
Yeah.
in case they wonder why.
Well, the lease is over in the back here.
Okay, all right.
Yes. We still have that. There's another note coming. Note C is that note about the $20,000
Oh, okay.
reserve.
Okay.
That was done back in 1988. Note D, what we do on the income statement is we come down in the different categories that you have, regional planning, local services, so forth, and we close those all out to the general fund, so that the general fund is it. And note E, investments. I understand from looking at the minutes of meetings that you are looking into or considering trying to find some higher income producers. it's hard to know what to do with money like that. It's entrusted to you and you're responsible for it. You put it in the stock market, and the stock market crashes the next month. I mean, it's pretty bad. And so I think this here represents an ultra-conservative position. And you're a broker or a financial planner, I'm sure, could probably find something that might give you a little bit more money and that's still probably in the bond market as opposed to stocks.
Would have been with Apple for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours yesterday,
Yes,
and then it would,
yep, you never know.
This board's identified, this area as an objective for us for this year. And last year, we deferred it to this year,
Yes,
so that we get the new executive director in place.
Yep.
But before your audit next year, we will have addressed this and most probably changed this program.
It would be a good idea. I'm sure there's something better out there for you to pick up a few extra dollars anyway. Now, note F is the lease agreements, and here the first paragraph relates to this space that you're renting, and that goes through June 30th, 2015. The second one is where you entered into the agreement with Rico, and on the maintenance thing, and the minimum payments over a period of 5 years, ending March 29 of 2019, $511 a month. The payments are made to GE Capital. Rico assigned the lease over to them. So down below, for the next 5-year period, I'm sure we, again, generally accepted accounting principle says this is what we need to show. We show, and actually the year ended June 30, 19 would be your final payment on the maintenance agreement. Pitney Bowes' machine here again, strictly a lease. That lease expires June of 16, so we just show 2 payments there. And that's just an informational note. Subsequent events, there have been nothing of any great import that would affect the statements since the year end. So again, that statement has to be in there. Page 8. Page 8 is the total of expenses of $745,499 by type of expense. And that $745,499 is the expense figure we saw over on page 3 on the statement of resources and expenses. Just a couple of comments on some of the items. Consultants went from 106,000 down to 32. That all depends on the kind of contracts you have. And it's every year. It seems to vary. One year it's up, the next year it's down. So that you expect to fluctuate, and it did. Contract services, HHW, that went up about $5,000 this year. And let's see, depreciation 1901, we're doing that over a 5-year period, so it'll be $1,900 a year.
On the computers, so that probably shows why the computer expense is less.
Yeah. And employee fringe benefits, they went up 18,000. A lot of that had to do with Kim's leaving and Jeff coming on board, for instance, in the health. Number one, everybody probably knows your premiums for health insurance have gone up. But you have, Kim, I believe, was carried through, I think it's this August. But so
We
there
just
was,
made another payment.
and then you were in on, so it was, you were added. So that was the biggest item that increased, was in the health. And on the retirement, again, the vacation pay had an effect on the retirement expense because when Kim's vacation pay was paid, then the percent, whatever, got added in there, so there was a big money there. And the other things that are in there are dental and disability and life, and they're all very minor amounts, very small differences. Travel and meetings, that went up 5,000. Here again, that depends on the kind of contracts you have, because of course you did have the retirement part of the thing that accounts for part of that increase, good part. And but you know, it's the staff and where they go out to meetings with the towns and so forth, and it all adds up. So that's that page. Page 9 is not required by generally accepted accounting principles, but I put it in because the state, I had somebody there 2 years back told me they liked this. This here just, it shows where the money came from for completed contracts, and well, I've got some of the in-process ones too. The federal and state money. So that it shows what the amount of the contracts were and the participation and whether there was matching funds and all that kind of thing. And there again, that's self-explanatory. It helps the state when they're looking at their own particular contracts. And then we're down to the last 2 pages. 10 and 11, here again, you're on the left side going down, we have the education administration, then we have regional services, and what made that whole thing up, and then local services, and continues on to page 11. The left-hand side, the money columns, 3 money columns, total actual expenses per each contract, income per each contract, and then the excess or deficiency of the resource or expense. So in other words, that's the total of that column when you get onto page 11 equals that loss of 27,000. Everything here has to tie in. The right-hand side of the page is a breakdown of the income. For instance, if you look at total education and administration, the first item, the income's $39,766. Well, 37,000 of that came from local assessments. It wasn't like the billing. The only contract income that was there was $2,776, which is the a part of the targeted block grant. The targeted block grant in your budget is broken down into, I think, three different places. And so some of it's hard to take the assessments and know where to put them. And Kim, I think when he did it, I think he used the prior year and looked at it and well, what were our expenses, and do we get any contract income, like in the education administration, we get a very tiny amount. So we threw in 37,000. So based on that 37 being in there, along with the 2,700, you have a gain on that in that section of 5,354. But you have to keep in mind it's the local assessments that are doing it, and the local assessments in other cases here where you had losses, the local assessments, at least the loss would have been much higher if you didn't show it there. It would have to be shown someplace, but so and the towns need to know too that where the money's being used. So here again, this is by program code. The books are great, and these figures they're no great effort for me to come up with, they've come right out of your system. Right? And it's really, all on one page, it's really great, as far as the expenses go, and then the income is another section. Put them all together. And page 11 again, those are the totals, and on the left side, total expenses of the 745. That's what we saw on page 3, and also on the detail on page 8. Income 718,000, that's what was on page 3, or statement of resources. And loss of 27,478. So that is spread across every contract you work on. And I think that's about it.
Does any,
I guess my only general comment I was going to make was on the loss of Barbara, and we've already talked about that. She will be out, great loss for you.
Jeff's challenge is to replace that position with an equally or more talented individual. It's a
It's hard
challenge.
to find somebody with
Not
that
gonna be
kind
easy.
of talent.
Let's try for equal.
Let's get the equal.
We do have that position program for more hours in the proposed budget, reflecting some of what Herb has told me about, the workload there and getting the job done, and somebody new coming on, and some of the transition.
What
it's gonna take.
timing do you see for Barbara transitioning out and a new person interested?
We're getting very close. We've got a number of resumes. We've started looking at the resumes. We have talked, had sort of a pre-interview with one candidate from the SAU who was interested. I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks to set up some interviews.
Yeah, because the timing would be very important, that not to have a gap.
Yes, yeah, very much. We want to. Barbara's put me on notice, so I'm moving forward to make sure that we have that month at least of transition where she can spend time with a new person and try to make that smooth as possible.
Yes, sir.
I have a question about going global.
Oh.
Is it a committee that's working on that?
There's probably several committees, would be my guess.
Oh boy, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and it's taken them a long time to get to this point. And I went, in my profession, we have to put in 40 hours of continuing education every year. And some of it's tax, especially when they make changes, we concentrate there. But we have so many, a certain number of hours have to be on the auditing and accounting side. And I went to a 2-day one, and it was all practically on this kind of thing. And then when you come out of it, you think, if I have to do it tomorrow, I don't know where I would start, because they haven't really defined it completely. Here's the principle, and this is what we're going to do, and that's a fact. It's going to be completely. I don't know how IRS is going to go along with this. Because IRS likes to see the percentage of completion, because they want their money as you go along. They don't want to wait. You got a 4-year job. I can imagine some of these big contractors, the road builders and big contractors. It's going to be a tremendous job for them. Huge.
On the same line here, I'm just curious, this discussion kind of brought it to my attention, but this statement, in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States, it makes it sound like it's industry developed best management practices. Is there no legal, under law, either federal or state laws requiring certain things to be reported in certain ways? Is the whole thing
The way they do
an industry developed consensus thing?
Yeah, the way they do that, it develops over a period of time, and things do change. If you say, golly, I don't like this completed thing, I'm just not going to do it, then we as the auditor would have to say, then there'd be a qualification in the statement that everything was fine except that. the commission does not go along with the completed contract concept. It's no big
But-
problem.
But IRS wouldn't, or the the Congress wouldn't step in and say,
No,
we don't like this in the United States, you're gonna report to the IRS this way.
yeah.
We don't have any of that?
There's some things where things are done one way for taxes and another way for the financial statements. And for instance, from a tax paying point of view, they wrote off the cost of a huge truck. I have a client that all their trucks cost them $150,000 and up. And so they write them off. I don't do an audit for them, so I don't have to take exception, but they, for tax purposes, you can write it all off. But in financial statement, you would have to indicate that the statements are prepared on the income tax basis. And these are the things that are different, and one of them would be $150,000 that's been written off for tax purposes, but it's not written off on the books. It's depreciated over 7, 10 years, whatever. So it makes it. There is a section on page 4 of the 1120, it's the corporate returns, where there's a reconciliation between book income and taxable income.
Wow, thank you for those comments. Focusing on our audit, are there any other questions that anybody would like to ask her at
You
this
still
time?
have your Jaguar?
Yes. I can't afford another one.
Seeing now, I would like to ask for a motion to accept the audit report presented to us today.
So moved.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing now, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Well, thank you very much
They're
for.
gonna get paid this year.
You told me, I think I will. They always have been, yes.
And
It's
thanking
always a
you in
pleasure.
advance for your help throughout this year, because as we transition from one bookkeeper controller to another, that there will be questions and guidance that we'll be seeking.
Anytime you want it, I'm of the old school, I don't charge for phone calls.
Oh, wow.
So,
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
yep,
I would
Take care of her.
yes.
like to just make a comment that
Yeah.
that it's normal for a nonprofit, one of the objectives for a nonprofit is to have like a year's worth of your expenses, quote, as in the bank, in some form of an investment. We do not have that. We have about a half a year's worth of expenses in the bank. And that means two things. One, it just points out the necessity for the continued seeking out of projects from the private sector, from states, locals, and federal government, because without this continued flow, we can only last 6 months. The other thing for our membership is that we are not a fat and happy, lazy organization, and that building reserves one after another and sitting here with a lot of money. We don't. We have to earn our income every year. Fantastic. This is good. And, yes, sir?
One thing that popped out at me that might be worth looking into, that's, we're in our last year on the lease agreement,
Yeah.
and it would be probably prudent to have a discussion with the school department, whether they have any contemplation of not continuing the lease. I don't think we have to enter into negotiations yet, but if they were contemplating us getting out of here, it's a long process to find another place, so it would be good to get a signal.
Yeah, I've had a couple initial conversations, and I need to sit down with the superintendent real soon to formalize that.
Yeah.
It would be, and everybody chip in to this, but it would be our desire to stay here.
Yeah, I think we get a very reasonable deal
and the amount of
here,
space.
and trying to move out would be, talk about a loss. It would be quite expensive to try to move out of the space, so.
It's not only that, it would take months of attention to do it, and,
Yeah, it would be
yeah.
a real distraction.
Super. The other thing that, on vacation carryovers, I would like to, again, subject to the will of the board here, ask that if you approve any vacation carryovers for anyone on the staff, that it be in writing,
Okay,
so it's documented, just you to them, and so it's documented, and also that if it comes to the occasion for you personally wanting to carry over vacation, that it be documented in writing and signed by the current chairman
okay.
of the board, so that it's always kept in writing, because it is a liability. And the objective of the vacation policy for employees and yourself is to take the darn stuff, you know, to work it in there. But there are times that it's not possible, but it just needs to be documented so that we don't have to think back now 4 years ago, why is it that this happened or whatever. It's every year, it's documented, documented, documented. So it because it is a liability of the commission. Super. Okay, super. Why don't we move back onto our agenda here, the Lakes Region Plan Advisory Committee. Jean, as you've heard me comment, I serve on that committee, has done an excellent job at shepherding this through. And the next adventure, well, what is it that you would like to talk about, Jean?
Well, I have a memo that was passed out from Jean. That I already passed out at the beginning of the meeting. You should have that for, if I can find my copy at the beginning of the meeting. I shouldn't have passed it out at the beginning of the meeting.
I don't think you did, sir.
No, you didn't do the moment.
I did.
Yeah, you must have.
I did pass it out.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, it's
This
not
side
here.
of the
I-
table.
Oh,
I
is
don't
that
have
what it is?
any-
Okay.
We have a
Here it is.
broken spoke
I have
here.
one.
No, it's different.
I
Yeah.
passed it out to one.
I stopped the whole thing.
That's,
I was eating a donut.
What's more important?
yeah.
Thank you.
Lemon cookies might be more
Yeah.
important. Oh, so he went one way and the other, and I stopped.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, certainly.
I thought it was diversified enough in the approach that would make it around. So anyway, you know, there's not a whole lot of new news. I think everyone's aware of what's going on. We've published the executive summary and widely distributed that, and we've distributed copies of the plan to or RSA 36 to the three places in the community: the select board, the planning board, and the libraries, where they have to have copies. So that's basically step one that's occurred. And we didn't make photocopies of this huge thing for everybody. We sent them the CD-ROMs and the executive summary. And it's on the website. And then we do have to have a formal notice of public hearing as per RSA 36 again. And we've done that with we've published that well in advance of the 30-day. I think we actually have 45 or 60 days, and 30 were required for notification on that. So that has been done. We've properly noticed the meeting. And then on the 29th, that'll be our regular commission meeting, and we're setting aside a portion of the commission meeting to have the noticed public hearing for discussion and comment on the plan. And basically, we're planning on having that open house ahead of time, having our meeting, having the public hearing, taking the comment, not necessarily responding at the public hearing to the comments. We're required, again, by RSA 36 to respond to every comment in writing, so we will do that. following the meeting, we'll respond to every comment in writing and distribute that and put that on the website. You know, if there is a motion to approve the plan at the September 29th meeting, that will, certainly I'll be very happy about that, but if not, we will bring it to the October commission meeting and have more comment and seek approval at that meeting. And if it, I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Are there gonna be any more committee meetings, or are we done at the committee level?
There is a committee meeting scheduled for after the commission meeting for you to review our written responses. I believe it's October 15th at 9 a.m. right here. That will give us a little bit of time, you know, a couple of weeks after the commission meeting to craft the written responses and get your input and feedback on those on the 15th.
I guess I don't understand the process. If there's questions or comments on it and then you're gonna respond, could there potentially be changes to the plan?
Sure, yes, absolutely.
So what will we approve on the 29th?
You may not approve it on the 29th, but so far, we've really only received one substantive comment, and so there might be comments at the September 29th meeting that would require revisions before people would be comfortable adopting the document. There may just be minor comments or comments.
So we play it by ear as to what occurs?
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been available publicly for quite some time. We've had a lot of discussion. You know, I think it's a very reasonable document, and I think I'm expecting it to be approved, but you never know. I mean, I think that's the process. We need to get the public and our membership to review it, and you know, the community representatives to consider adoption, and that's their decision.
The real key, it is on our website, and so that as individuals or groups of individuals want to review it in detail, that's how they'll do it, so that we're not spending the thousands and thousands of dollars killing trees. So the information is there, they just have to utilize it electronically.
Yeah, and we did the executive summary. We certainly spent a lot of time and effort trying to develop the executive summary into something that would be very readable and approachable for people to be able to look at the plan.
Jeff did make a presentation to the Belknap Economic Development Council, and I was not there. I have heard from our people within Laconia that it was, his presentation was well received, but also what was very, very nice is that in terms of our community in Laconia, there was a focus on, okay, here's the data, now what are we going to do with it, and how can, because some of the changes, and one of the big ones, and it affects not only the individual towns and cities, but the region and the state, is the demographic changes, and the realization that we need to address that seriously, or else we're going to run out of young people, and it affects our entire way of life. That the younger people are not coming here, but the ones that are here that are being educated are leaving here.
We just did this with our school buildings. We're looking to actually close one of our school buildings. And we're fighting a very tough road to do this. It's gotta be done. We're running out of students. We've dropped another 18 this year. And even though there's always there's a kind of a influx, but it dies out because they don't last till their freshman year in high school. They're gone. And industry is not coming in, it's drifting elsewhere, more into the high tech, and a lot of this is going into home industries or single, and, you know, there's been more and more people doing work, as I do, from the home front, as opposed to going out and sitting in a cubicle.
Yeah, Jeff makes the point very, and he articulates it very well. As the population pressures experienced over the last several decades continue to flatten, we and all towns and cities, it is a shifting from accommodating growth to accommodating, trying to improve community resiliency. So it's gonna affect every single one of us in every single way that we can think of. Okay, great. So I hope all of you will be able to come to the commission meeting. That night will be a very, very important culmination of this. And the comments that Bob made about the advisory committee, I served on there also. And this whole process has been heavily staff supported but led by this advisory committee. And so it is not a government dictating to towns and cities. It's been the representatives of the towns and cities deciding what to focus on. Okay, broadband advisory committee?
That's on there, there's been a real, that committee hasn't met for several months, and that was a function of staff turnover, and then the GIS planner who had been working on it, started writing it, and you know, I had to have another staff change there. But we do have a plan to, we should have a completed draft of the broadband study by the middle of October, and we do have plans to get the advisory committee back together to review drafts as we move forward. So that's gonna be restarting real soon.
Excellent. Any questions on that? A rail authority? Tank did submit a written report. Any questions about that? Let me see that. The executive report was done.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any comments that you'd like to make about it, Jeff?
I think of anything in particular. I don't know. A lot on you can see a lot on the regional plan document. There's been a lot of work on that. Oh, the household. I guess the one bit of good news: the HHW, the 10-town HHW contract that we have been suffering, you know, working on for 6 months now without any additional funding, as a loss. We have now, I think, knock on wood, got to a point where we can now close that contract out. We have completed our obligations on that contract, and we can stop the bleeding on that. The Granite State Future really need to, I want to try to get this wrapped up and the broadband plan wrapped up in short order. Our transportation plan program is, we really need to, there's a number of things that we need to implement on there and get ready for the next 2-year cycle. So those are some of the bigger picture items there.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has about any of the projects.
You'll be continuing the practice of providing each community with a letter
Sure.
showing the community what value the commission brought to their communities?
Yes, so those are actually completed, and those will go out shortly. We have basically a report like, not similar to this, for every town, basically telling what outreach we provided specifically to the town, and then all of the regional services that we provided in addition to their town services.
Have we sent those letters also to the state representatives for those communities?
I'm not sure that that's been the practice in the past, but we certainly can.
Just thinking as been demonstrated that when legislators don't understand, they go off half-cocked, and it would be very good to, you don't have to send them the entire group, I wouldn't think, but for a just the towns that they're responsible for and that they cover. It will help them understand what the commission does do for the communities.
That's a good idea, yeah, we can
Just
easily
keep it
CC them.
in front of their eyeball.
Absolutely, I think that's our challenge overall, I think that's a great idea.
Check up one.
We'll let it slide this time.
Okay.
You know, there is some discussion, I mean, we did talk about and maybe next month I could put that on the agenda for some kind of a legislative reception or something like that. I know we've had some discussion about that in the past, and we've referred to it a couple times in the meeting here, so that's something maybe we can get on the agenda.
Because our need to educate is strong, not only the selectmen and the budget committees, but the legislators too. And so somehow we have to address that, so that they can understand who we are and what the devil we do.
What do we do?
Yeah, let's see. Okay, that takes care of that. Before the board roundtable, beginning to comply with the direction of the board here, that we look back at our investment program, the 300 some odd thousand that we do have invested with the state at practically zero return. I've given some documents to Jeff from another organization, and the first thing that as an executive committee we'll need to do is to review it in terms of what our investment policy is, in terms of our risk profile and what it is we really want from our investment pool. And then from that, then to disseminate it to responsible potential advisors. And then to look at their responses and decide how we want to reposition that money. It's a potential source of additional operating income, dividend throw-off that we're not receiving now. And we've all known, and we've talked about it, and this year is going to be a year that we're going to bring it back to the board here and all get involved in the process of who we should engage for presentations, and then selecting and making changes. Anything before we do the roundtable?
Yeah, a question about the insurance.
Whether the question was if, for libel, I think the state law doesn't cover libel charges against board members, that was what and so, whether I'm not sure that the directors and officers insurance would cover that either, libel, and I think there's a question of policy here, whether you know, correcting for errors and things like that. But the libel issue is a whole nother standard that goes beyond the state law of protection for nonprofit boards. So I think so that's currently out there, that the state legislation and the resolution that we passed, you know, covers material damages and accidents, but not libel.
Could I make a suggestion, or maybe even a motion, that you check with our insurance company as to what would the cost be for us to have the director and officer insurance, or insurance?
Right, and that number was, he didn't give me an exact number, but he said it was about $3,500 to $4,000 per year to do that. I guess what I gotta double check on is, does that cover libel, directors and officers insurance?
Well,
And I guess what you're asking is, if that doesn't cover libel, what other insurance policy would?
well, I guess I'm thinking director and officer insurance for a board, as are many other nonprofit groups. They have, quote, D&O insurance
Right.
to protect them from a suit or whatever. But
And we discussed that at the last meeting, that we're protected from most things, but I think Bob brought up the point that libel is not one of the things that addresses. So, so maybe that is the reason why we need the directors and officers insurance, but I'm not sure that covers libel either, and that's what I have to double check.
The other associations, the other Rpcs at your association meeting?
Some of them, basically the response I've got there is I don't think most do. There were a couple that did, and the comment is if you have a board member who's concerned about it, spending the $3,000 or $4,000 for the insurance is probably a smart idea. So there are at least a couple commissions that do hold the insurance. They don't think that they really necessarily need it, but where there's a gray area, they feel that it's prudent to have it.
That's a huge chunk of money.
On an annual basis, yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
It's huge.
It is, and comes right out of our overhead and indirect, and I'm struggling to get the number of hours up for our bookkeeper to be able to afford to increase the number of hours for the bookkeeper to the level that Herb is, to 30 hours from 20 hours. And we're trying to get the indirect rate up too, to help to deal with this in a more long-term. The real issue, this gets into a bigger conversation, but the real issue with that, and I probably should have asked Herb to discuss that with the board a little bit, we have to take a loss while we're doing that. We have a set indirect rate, and if we increase our indirect rate, we're still being compensated at our set indirect rate. So we have to basically suffer a loss for a year. We have to get reimbursed from our federal contracts at a lower rate than our true cost for a year to get that reset. So it's a very painful process for me to try to move the indirect rate up, because it can relate to losses in the organization, and that's something that we struggled with last year. I think the real good news is we did come out. The actual loss was 27. We planned on the 25. We had the budget adjustment, so we did come very close. What that required though is I billed almost all of my time for the last 2 or 3 months of the fiscal year, and did put pressure on the regional plan budget and the broadband plan budget that I think is, it has put a lot of, so we're gonna have to use dues to finish out both of those projects. But I take liability concerns of board members very seriously, and I just think the libel issue, I think, is an issue that basically what we've said is if someone makes a mistake, if someone does something on the board, we're gonna hold them harmless, and we have money reserved for doing that. Do we wanna provide that same protection to board members for anything they say about anyone? Is one of the questions it comes down to, and I think that's where the state law draws the line, because it's,
I think we continue to think about this, and the key is when we had an update on the changes to the state laws, one of the comments by the presenter there was that for planning board members, that you just keep your mouth shut, and you think collectively in meetings like this. But if any of us go off half-cocked, then there's a certain personal responsibility that has to that no organization can protect against. For planning board members, you can't indicate prior to a public hearing how you're going to vote on an application, because then you have to recuse yourself. And you have to stay open till the public hearing has been held, and then in the planning board, you make your comments and your decisions. The same way with us and commissioners, that you just have to be responsible and not go off half-cocked. And I personally have a lot of confidence in everyone here, you know, that everyone is personally responsible for their comments. We haven't gone off half-cocked. So I think it's just a continuing, almost social thing that we have to keep looking at. And I'd suggest keep bringing it up at your association meetings to find out how others are addressing it, and just explore with the insurance agent, and there may be things, because other groups like ours will be concerned about it, and where there's a demand, there's generally a product developed somewhere that would be less expensive, but $4,000 is an awful lot of money.
Our bylaws, or our financial policies require that $50,000 bond, which we do have in place. But it's almost like an insurance against
The
ourselves,
cost,
is basically how the insurance agent explained it.
I guess my bottom line question, not talking about libel, because maybe we should self-discipline on that, but in general, so say that there's a group that didn't like something, or we as a group did something wrong, and they say, okay, I'm suing Lrpc.
Too.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, this board passed a resolution saying that they will defend any board member who charges are
So
brought
we're
up
good,
against.
we're good there.
I thought we were, you know, the libel issue came up at the last meeting, and I just really, I looked at it, I wasn't sure really what to do with it, and I really, at that point, thought that we maybe had reached a limit of how much protection that we can provide board members, because, you know, because that's where the state law ends as far as protection. That's where the traditional resolution that this board has taken on the issue ends, so.
So we're good. The thing, it was left though, that you were gonna check with the other groups like us.
Right,
you did,
and they
that's
didn't,
your
you know,
report, so
there was
that's good.
no, we talked about making a joint request to the Attorney General's office. There wasn't a lot of interest from the others in making that a group request. I have made an individual request. I'm not getting responses, you know, I could chase after them.
Well, you've
better.
done what we asked, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
okay, thanks.
Never hurts to continue to bring that up from time to time, because all of us have estates that
Exactly.
we need to preserve and protect.
Absolutely.
But every organization, every group, every board has the same kind of issue. Okay, well, why don't the board roundtable, Wayne, is what's happening in your part of the world?
Mine feels pretty quiet. Let me iterate something that may be of interest or not. We had some police officer openings, so we put in the paper, we got 47 applicants, of which we scheduled them for physical testing. Half of them showed up for physical testing. Of the half that showed up, half failed. Okay? Now, these are all young guys, too. I mean, this is not older folks, like myself.
That's fitness you're talking
Yeah.
about? Fitness.
Physical fitness. So out of 47, half didn't show up for that physical fitness. Of the half that showed up, failed. So that left us with 12 applicants that passed out of 47 just to get to the oral boards. We then scheduled oral boards, and we got 3 out of the 12 that were acceptable as a result of the oral boards. So out of 47 applicants, we wound up with 3. Potential candidates now to go forward with more in-depth interviews. That's not with a background check, not with a criminal check or any of that stuff. Just oral boards and physical.
Are these people just off the street, or they
Yes.
have some kind of formal training?
Well, off the street. You cannot get formal training. You can't get through the police academy in New Hampshire without being employed by a town or city.
Did any of them have criminal justice degrees or
One did.
classroom time?
One did out of the 12. Yeah.
Wow.
So interesting.
Who's the favorite?
We're having building maintenance issues like everybody else, or let's say, at least we are, and trying to, after 20 years of trying to solve a building needs or space needs plans, we've ignored, and 100 years later, we're doing something about one building that we can't even really use because there's no parking, because it's so old and was built for horse and buggy. That's our town hall. We literally had to shore up the sills, get the bat doo-doo out, and now we're re-roofing the building just to say we can go in it. And it's amazing how it's finally catching up. And it's a day late and 100 years short. And we're facing space needs of everything, our police station, fire station, and our town offices. We have so much file cabinets that we have a floor issue right now for weight. So we're in a deep dig to look at.
Well, that's certainly motivating.
Really?
Steve?
Is bat doo-doo covered under brownfields?
Yes.
I think
You know,
it
we
may be.
tried to get that, but it was quite a process,
Yes, sir.
Well, we're still in the middle of our library situation. There's been an attempt to build a new library for about the last 6 years. They don't have room for the kind of books that, and internet space that people want, and because we're a town meeting, we have to get 66% of the voters to approve a bond, and we've been hitting about 60%, or even last year like 62%. So finding another 4% of people is going to be expensive. We have a blue ribbon panel. Been working on a weekly basis all summer to come up with a proposal. Part of the issue in the past has been that for various reasons the current library can't be added to or expanded. So now it looks like maybe we're going to go across the road on a site that the town owns, and that creates, what do you do with the old library? And we need a police building. So everybody says, how much is it gonna cost us when it's all done? So we have another committee working on the police department situation, but I think a small town like Tuftonboro, it's gonna be tough. I think the 4% more people together is achievable if they do a good job of saying what this is gonna cost and how it's gonna affect taxes over the next 10 years. They haven't done that so far. And I don't know whether any of you ever followed the water quality issue in Mirror Lake, which is in Tuftonboro, but there was a cyanobacteria outbreak there about 8 years ago. And we now have a town committee that's looking at a town road that goes right by the lake and contributes quite a bit of sediment on how to fix that. I'm on that committee. It's interesting situation, because we have a lot of local contractors on it. That's all the things you have to do to get a public works project going there. It doesn't attract local contractors. Anyway, that's going on, and I'm really glad to hear the way the TAC is going.
Yeah, road-based water quality issue right
Yes.
there, yeah.
And I would encourage you, or encourage TAC, and I'd be there more often if I had a little more time, but it's not just the roads close to the lake. If you look at the watershed situation, our roads cross every stream there is, and every one of them picks up just a little more, and when it comes to the total load, it's probably more from little places than it is from big places. But we have to look at everything.
Thank you.
And Lake Winnipesaukee Watershed Association raised $3,000 on the Mount Washington silent auction, lots of people contributed to. It's gonna help support the floating classroom, which did pretty well this summer, based on it being a first year.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Pat?
Okay, Tamworth. First of all, I need to make sure we say thank you, I say thank you to this guy, because at my invitation, he came to speak to our planning board regarding Tufton Borough's experiences with water testing. And that's an issue that we've been discussing at our planning board. And he was able to give us a lot of educational information regarding the arsenic and the dangers thereof and different methods that his town had used to get people to do this. So we're grateful, so thank you again. And the other thing that's happening, well, I'm sure there's lots of things, but one other thing I want to mention is that the Economic Development Commission in Tamworth is sponsoring on November 1st, in the morning, it's a Saturday, a forum called Agribusiness. And what we're doing is we're inviting the several towns that are around us, their selectmen and their planning board. And the point of the forum is that we want to have growers and users of farm products get together and talk about, and I've got someone coming from grocery stores, restaurant owners, and to talk about what they need that they don't have, that isn't being grown, or how they could handle cooperative products that could go to a grocery store or a restaurant that might need more product in a particular field that could be grown, that might not be. The whole point is to help those people who are the producers of produce make more money. And where could they go to do that? What could they grow to accomplish that? And we're inviting a person from the UNH cooperative to also be there to talk about what legal things need to be, like certifications or whatever, if in fact certain products are being offered to a grocery store. So the other part, not only is that part important, but having the selectmen and planning board people is important to have them in general. We keep trying to offer opportunities for them to get together, so they could even talk about something else if they want to, privately, you know. So that's what we're doing, November 1st.
There's a restaurant in Laconia called Locals. It's based in the old train station in downtown. It's done extremely well, and their claim to fame is using locally produced items on their menu, and they change the menu. Their culinary ability is sky high. It is astronomically, it's a great restaurant to go to, special occasion or whatever. And they've been so successful that they've now opened at lunchtime, I think Tuesday through Friday or something like that.
That's good.
It is, they change the menu every 2 weeks depending upon the availability of local product and things. But it's truly outstanding. If you get in trouble with your spouse or a significant other, take them there, you'll get out of trouble. Barbara?
No, I was quiet.
Fantastic. Until your budget committee meets, and then Jeff will be.
Yeah, listen, those newsletters are going out soon, Barbara.
Mr. Cotton?
Things are pretty quiet in town. I was particularly interested in what was distributed from this update for local land use officials, which I don't know how significant how many people received that in each town, but I'm going to make sure our selectmen and our planning board and our zoning board of adjustment get this.
Yeah, and this was a law lecture series that we offered this, and these are the notes from that meeting that we're
I
passing
think
out.
that they should be, well, a load of information is in here that is really frightening in some cases.
Yeah.
Of particular interest to me was on page 19 of this, on gravel excavations, which come from RSA 155E. I'm referred to by name in 155E through the report that I was producing 40 years ago, and I think I'm still in there. I'm going to check.
Oh, super. That last year with the organizational changes taking place at what was then the local government center, Jeff and his staff picked up the ball and conducted a session. It was not heavily attended, but these are from that, and hopefully next year, as our legislature and the departments do make changes, that we'll be able to sponsor that kind of thing again to keep people abreast of the changes that are going on.
Could I ask a question?
Yes?
Is it possible for a digital form of that to be sent to at least our town administrator?
Just your email, sure, yeah,
That way they
absolutely.
could use a digital form to print them for our planning board and the selectmen?
Sure.
That would be great, I appreciate that. Would you say that I asked to have them, otherwise they're
You
gonna...
want that to go to who, the planning board chair? Or the-
No, if
the,
you send it actually to Cassandra Pierce, who is the administrator for the selectmen, she could make it available for the planning board and the selectmen.
Actually, that, more than just Tamworth, that would be good, Jeff, if that could be done to all of our member communities,
Okay.
sent to the planning director.
Or the town manager or town administrator?
Yeah,
Town
the
person?
chief macho, it would go to John and Guilford, and then he'd look very, very smart.
Indeed.
Oh, wow.
And actually, I'd like
They'll
to
get
have it
free
myself
parking now.
digitally. It might be digitally, because I could pull it out of,
Oh, we can easily, with a new photocopier, we just lay that on the photocopier, hit scan, and we can, it sends it to our email, and then we can forward it out, it's
yeah,
pretty
because
simple.
I want to personally take it to the planning board, and I will have one in my hand to do that,
Okay,
in case they didn't get one yet here or something.
okay, good. We'll definitely send that out. So in Tamworth, you'd like us to send it to you, not to the
Send it to Cassandra,
administrator?
just copy me,
Okay.
that would be great.
That's an excellent suggestion, thank
I
you.
think it's important, you know?
It's very
There's some
important.
things in there that, man,
Yeah.
Well, they sent it out electronically in preparation for this meeting.
I know that, but I didn't read every single page.
Oh,
So, but you must have it.
I know, but it's among everything, though, it'd be easier if they just are just sending me that one thing. Thank you.
Mr. Snelling?
We're also initiating a library expansion in Holderness, about $1 million expansion, but it's going to be paid for through private donations to avoid having to go to the town for a bond. So we'll see how that goes.
John?
Looking at the minutes from last time, I have more of the same, it looks. But the intersection, as you mentioned, the intersection on 11A at Guilford Village has been completed. It's maybe of interest to you, just because of the type of railings that they use, the guardrails that they use. It's different from what we typically see. A lot, it looks weak, but it's very effective, so.
You can see through it. It's a four-way road there, and as you're coming up to it, there's elevation changes, and the old style of posts that the guardrail went on would line themselves up so it would totally block the view of traffic coming down there. And with this new style, it looks flimsy as hell, but you can see through it, and you can see the cars coming.
Yeah, and the only way I know that it's effective is because one of our public works people found some advertising videos, demonstrations of how it works. They set it up out in the gravel pit
Well,
someplace.
thank you very much.
And had some vehicles, run into them straight on and on angles and that kind of thing. It's very effective, I was surprised. The town is moving forward on budgeting for this Black Brook study that's going to be in conjunction with the city of Laconia. That'll be good.
Have you read
Town
this?
wants to be cooperative because I have 90%.
pages.
Drainage area is in Guilford.
Yes, it is.
And we do benefit, there are some, our main commercial centers draw on that water supply that is the focus of the study, so. Concerned on what causes some pollution there and what can be done to improve things. Walmart is nearing completion still. It's, they are behind schedule. They are behind schedule. I had an interesting conversation with the foreman who's in charge there, and he just keeps rolling his eyes because they keep throwing curveballs at him. That he's supposed to stay on schedule, but they keep changing what they want to do there and running into problems. But Yeah, they're doing the best they can, and they do plan on having their open house, I believe, here in a couple of weeks. Grand opening, rather. Right now, things are generally quiet. We are hoping to, I've been made aware that there will be a kind of a major facelift to one of our commercial areas coming through soon. A site plan will be coming through for that. I don't know when, but I'm looking forward to that, so I'm not really allowed to speak on that too much, but along the lines of, I guess, liability and saying things that are controversial. We did recently approve a religious use home occupation. And there was some concern about what if we denied this. I don't think the board was ever intending to deny it, but I wanted to make sure we handled it correctly. And the town administrator had done some research and found a case law, or a case, I should say, a court case, where a small town in New Hampshire had had a proposed change to a religious use, and at the start of the discussion, planning commission or planning board member said, gave, I don't remember his or her opinion about that religion's position on a couple of social issues. Yeah, and they ended up denying the site plan application. Of course, they sued and won easily. It was upheld in appeals and that kind of thing. So I mean some things seem very obvious, but you know, I'm sure there's occasions when you want to speak your opinion about something, but always better to bite your tongue and share it after the meeting if you feel the need to give an opinion. That's my 2 bits worth on that.
Thank you. Any comments?
Just that there was a small correction in the minutes on John's education, that, you know, that that originally went out, what's in your packets was revised. I just wanted to point out that change, because we hadn't pointed that out before. And then also just the NATO, we didn't talk about the NATO news is in here.
Right.
You know, this one, I just got the new one. I hope you find it's useful. One of the big things on it is MAP 21, the legislation to renew the transportation funding for the country. Has been a huge political football, and basically Congress just kicked the ball down another 6 months down the field. But they've just, they're in the middle of a comment period, and it's just been extended a month, and there's information in here about that. So, you know, the transportation bill is not much more important to regional planning and this organization than that. And so there's a lot involved in that. There's some discussion about making rural planning commissions have the same kind of status as the MPOs in this new bill. So there's some interesting things on that. So I encourage you, if you have time, to take a look at that. And NATO's a really good resource.
Thank you. Laconia has begun its master planning process. It's 10 years up, and it's a different approach, funded by a grant from the Orton Family Foundation, and it's focused on reimagining Laconia, and the purpose is to engage the public way up front before documents are produced. The traditional way in businesses or private or even for master plans is that a group produces a document and then at the last minute says to the public, here, this is what we want to do, and it gets approved that way. This way, it's engaging them with workshops. They're taking parking spaces downtown on different days and getting people to come up and doing interviews. And I'm on that advisory committee, and we have to interview people throughout the town as to why they came here, what's good about it, what focus they think that the city should be taking. And it's an entirely different approach to master planning. And I'll tell you as we go through it, you know, how it works. On one hand, I'm not a real touchy-feely guy, and so I come from private business where you study, you produce it, you document it, and that's it. but this is much more of a social interaction and citizen participation in the community up front. And it's interesting, our city council's having difficulty with this thing also, with this approach to thing. But it's really to get the involvement up front versus later on. And the other thing, just last night at the planning board meeting in Laconia, we gave final approval to a new fire station. It's, we're changing our current fire station from a 3-bay into a 4, and putting an addition on it, moving the people and the functions out of over top of where the apparatus goes in and out. We've got beautiful apparatus, but the central fire station is wickedly old, and it couldn't even accommodate the apparatus.
Is
And
this
so-
down at Lrpc?
No, this, yeah, right there, on North Main Street. And it will become it's a $4 million project. And it's taking up about all the capital money this year out of the city. But the fire chief for about 10 years has been asking and asking and asking. And he just worked his way up the CIP ladder. But this was finally approved, and its construction's going to begin next month.
And location?
It's on North Main Street.
I
It's,
mean, same area?
it's the same building.
It's gonna stretch
Ah,
out.
okay.
Yeah,
Goes off to the
but
right.
years ago, the city acquired the lot beside of the current fire station in anticipation of needing to expand it. And when this is constructed, the reserve equipment that is based in Lakeport, which Guilford borrows every now and then, is all gonna be moved into this facility. So if you're familiar, in Lakeport on Union Avenue, there is a fire station there. That will be surplus to the fire department's needs, and it will be revert back to the city for whatever they wanna do with it, which I don't currently know of any plans for it.
So the purpose of moving those units in Lakeport to the central station, so it'll be harder for Guilford to
Borrow. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So John's gonna have it as his house.
Lake Park and all the good stuff. I live closer to, no, I live closer to Lake.
But with the population size of Laconia, we're at 15,000, 16,000, and with the demographic changes, we have 4 ambulances. One station in the Weirs, and the other 3 will be based here for the response time. And it's just interesting, when you look at the fire department's report of what they've done, it's almost a 3-to-1 ratio of medical calls to actual fire calls, with the medical calls growing.
And as we get older.
Yes.
Probably grow more.
And so just keep your eye out as we go along.
So the building gets extended to like Folsom Street or something like that?
Tremont,
Tremont Street.
yeah. It goes over there, and all the administrative is put in that side. In fact, once it's all built, there'll be an emergency operations center and a community room there. And when it is built, it would be an appropriate time for us to hold a commission meeting or something of that nature there.
Yeah.
But it's astronomical.
Do you have a fire unit accompany the ambulance on ambulance calls?
A lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
And then there are others, depending upon the 911 call for assistance, they make the judgment. And there's continued discussion at the CIP as to why an engine has to go out with an ambulance. And the fire chief responds that depending upon the nature of the emergency, there is equipment that's housed on the engines that are not on the ambulance. And the ambulance can focus on the individual, the needs of the individual, where if a tree has fallen, or this has happened, or whatever, they need that other equipment.
Jaws of life and stuff like that. That's where ours goes out.
So you automatically goes out in Bristol?
It's again, like he says, almost a judgment call. They do it sometimes on the scene once they're there.
Because I think in Concord it's automatic.
Automatic in Concord,
Yeah.
yes. We almost followed there.
So it's an item that's discussed, I think, in several communities.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, the members, as you know, CIP is a subcommittee of the planning board, And the planning board members there, when they say the last thing you want to do is ask the fire chief in the CIP process why he sends the engine out with the ambulance, it's worth a half an hour discussion. So those are the two big things. There's a great deal of permitted change that's going to be taking place. Just building additions, the Main Street Bridge is under construction. It's going to be very, very visible very, very soon. Thank you. Is there anything else that anybody would like to say? Then I would like to entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
The second came before the motion and the second, okay. Any discussion, seeing none, I'll call the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting is adjourned, and thank you all very, very much for coming and staying.